So welcome to this next episode, or this next exciting chapter of our series on change that Women Together are putting together. And I'm here with Diane. Thank you for joining us, Diane.
It's okay.
So, Diane, it's 20 years this year since you lost your husband, Pete, very suddenly. You were 52, he was 56, and your children in their 20s. And obviously they were long and dark times, but for the purposes of our conversation today, you're going to be doing a sort of look back with hindsight, the ways that God has been working, the ways that God has been changing you, a sort of before and after type reflect. So I'm just going to put a few questions to you, and I know that you've prepared your answers. So can you tell us, to start with, some of the things that your life was sort of revolving around, your identity was built on in those days of married life to Pete, all good and life-enriching things?
Well, it was quite a long time ago now, but yes, all my sort of early adult years, they had Pete in them because we met when we were quite young, and I was only 20 when we married. And we had 32 years together, and so my identity really was through those years, was as a busy wife and a mum, and they were really happy years running a home, and that's what I felt my identity was. Before I had the children, I had a career in journalism, and that was on hold when they were growing up. But when Pete died, 20 years ago, by then the children had grown up and moved on. And at that stage, I was had resumed my career, and I was a newspaper editor. And I think one thing about identity, I recall I had what was then a fairly typical grammar school education, which was a traditional school but fairly forward-thinking, and it was a girls' school. And they instilled in us that we had a privileged education and we shouldn't waste it, and so we should be high achievers. And I think one of the things looking back probably was that I might have just set too much store about, high achieving and, the career.
In your career.
Yeah.
So what were some of the ongoing struggles for you after losing Pete, if you like to put it this way, the challenges of coming to terms with a new way of being you?
Well, I think we were such a good team that worked together, and we'd dealt with all those kind of life cycle events together, like, dealing with the empty nest and death of both Pete's parents. And then starting this new life that was just the two of us. So to suddenly be alone, it really felt, I know other people have said this, but it really felt like being in an alien landscape without a map. Because home had always meant Pete to me, and life just didn't really make much sense. And I found quite quickly I could manage the practical side. I'm quite a practical person, so I could manage, the house and finances. But emotionally, I think the one thing that it kept coming back to me is that I had lost the role of being that special person to someone who was special to me, and it felt like being on the outside looking in. So
key central role of your life to be Pete's wife was missing.
Yes.
And what kinds of ways did you find of coping through that stage?
Well, I think it was one word: busy, frantically busy. So I was working at the time full time, and I just worked and worked, and it was to just block out the pain, cling to the familiar routines. But gradually, I sort of more positively was trying to make sense of the situation that I was in. And I did think and pray about what I might do differently, because things didn't have to go on the way they always had. And so I prayed quite a lot about it, and actually I'd never been to university because I got married quite young, and I applied for a place at Sussex University to do an English, an art history degree, and I was accepted, so I did that. And I was sort of thinking, gosh, what do young people do when they go to university? Oh, well, they usually have a gap year. And I didn't have time for a gap year because I was going in the September and I sort of gave my notice in. But I did apply to Interserve to do a short-term placement. And I went to Turkey for a couple of months to kind of be a support to missionaries in Istanbul. And that's so different from anything I've been doing up to then. So I did my degree, and then I went to London and did an MA at the Courtauld. And my daughter said, if you really like studying, Mum, she said, why don't you do something where you actually could study and earn some money? So, and she'd heard of some people where she worked that had gone on to do this. They're called London Blue Badge Tour Guides, and this is a couple of years course. So I did that, and I trained to be a London tour guide. And in all of those things, I obviously still had this desire to be busy, but increasingly there was this pleasure in learning new things and listening to why God had placed me where He had. And one of the things was such a lot of new conversations with people that I would never have come across normally, sort of young students, and then in London, students from all across the world. And I actually gave my testimony in the chapel of this, the college I was in London. And then on the Blue Badge course, they were people more my own age, but they were taxi drivers and magistrates. And so it was a totally different thing, but I was busy, but in a much more positive way.
Opportunities opening up.
Yeah. And then also, I'd always kind of kept a diary, but I kept a journal and poured it all out, and that was very helpful. And I always read widely about things and issues, especially if there were problems affecting me, and I found it very helpful to read about other widows and how they'd gone through similar situations. And there was one that people may know about, a woman called Elizabeth Elliot, who she wrote a book called, well, lots of books, but The Path of Loneliness. She was a young wife whose husband, Jim, was a missionary, and he was murdered quite a young age in South American jungle. And she found it very difficult to know why this had happened and how she would deal with it. But she came to the position of being able to, and this is what she said, to accept the pain of being alone as a calling, not a condition, which got me sort of thinking about. And the other person was a woman called Fiona Castle, who people may know about. She was the wife of Roy Castle, the celebrity trumpet player. They were both Christians. And she was very similar, or had a very similar situation to me, in that she was widowed after 31 years at the age of 54. And she came to Linfield for an evangelical rally just a couple of years after Pete died. And I met her on Linfield Common. And I think I was interviewing her for, something to do with one of our church newspapers at the time. And she was really kind and gentle and had such a zest for life. And she's 82 now, and she still speaks publicly about her faith. But the thing that she said that I kind of took hold of was that she said she never allowed herself self-pity, because she says that's very different from grief, which it is. But also every day she's very thankful for her life and the happy marriage that she had. And I think what I kind of took from that was both positions helped me to reframe my position and to think positively about the happy years I had, rather than negatively about the years I'd lost.
Really influential in your thinking about
Yeah,
it.
and then the one other sort of thing that was really helpful were my friends, and again that was quite an amazing thing, that how supportive they were, Christian friends and non-Christian friends, who they knew me and they were just happy to be there and listen, which is really important if when you're going through the worst sort of time of it. And so the positive thing out of that was that I do truly cherish my friends now, which I probably wasn't so good at keeping in touch with before. And I do work hard at, keeping up with my friendships. So
Friendships have become even more important.
definitely, yes.
So looking back, I wonder if there are ways that you can see the kindnesses of God woven through the story that perhaps you couldn't see at the time as kindnesses, but looking back now, you know that God was being kind in some way.
Yes, definitely. I mean, if I'm being honest, I would say that during those happy years of marriage and family life, I think probably God had been displaced to the sidelines of both our lives. We both became Christians after we'd been married about 12 years, and we were active church members. And although we knew that God was always there and could be called on, he wasn't as central as he is now to me. But immediately on Pete's death, I couldn't understand it. I sort of woke up, the first day, and I thought, I actually sort of, although it's horrible, I have a peace, which, and I thought, well, how have I got that? But I think the Lord was so gracious right from the time that Pete died. It was as if he had resumed his rightful place, and without any rebuke towards me, but he gave me the grace to listen and pause, stop being so busy, and reflect, and understand my need of him, and how our relationship should be. And so when you say the kindnesses, I recognise that it was the Lord who allowed me to try all those new things. It was him who brought all those new people into my life. He gave me the support of all those old friends, and he showed me how to have a grateful heart. So yes, looking back.
It's really powerful. Can you tell us something about the person that you know yourself to be today? Something that's changed, or that God has changed through your experience?
Yeah, I mean, it's a bit like a sandwich. I had a very rich, happy life before Pete died, and I have a very rich and varied life now. But there were some years in between, obviously, of it not being good, and of me not accepting the situation. And I went through periods like anybody does who loses someone they love, of being miserable, lonely, disconnected. But the difference is that I do now accept the path that I'm on, and it's the path that God has chosen for me and placed me in. And I do listen more and reflect more, which is partly easier because I don't have such a frenetic lifestyle like as I did. But it's also deliberate, as I've realised that the benefits that God gives us when we do stop and we listen to him in the quietness. And I have a psalm, which I'm not sure most people do, that's more often comes to me than other psalms, which is Psalm 46, and especially the verse that says, "Be still and know that I am God." But it's taken a really long time to actually get that fixed in me as how important it is. So I am content in my life, much more aware of the Lord's kindness and generosity towards me. And what I do know is that my all the things that I used for getting on in my career, and that my curiosity and ambition and drive, they're all gifts of character that the Lord has given to me. so I try to use them in ways that will please him, not just me, but accept that they're good gifts to have.
And one last question. Is there something that you would say to somebody who's facing a similar big challenge that you've gone through, or somebody who's just facing some kind of change which entails that sense of loss? What would you want them to hear from you, from your experience?
Well, we've been talking about identity, and there are many things, as we've seen, that give us identity, and which we rely on. And many are good, positive things. But I think what I found was that when we face a momentous change in our lives, that the one identity we really need to be sure of is our identity in Jesus, in Christ. And for me, it's been a slow dawning of recognition of God's provision for me, for what he's given me in the past and what he gives me each day, and being thankful for it. And in accepting my situation, my reliance on the Lord has deepened. I honestly didn't make enough time for him in those busy, happy family days. But he was, and I know this now, he was always there guiding and protecting us. But the relationship is much stronger for me now. And I think knowing my identity truly is first and foremost in him gives me greater assurance and comfort for whatever may happen in the days ahead.
So that would be the encouragement that you'd offer out to anybody, really, is to seek that
Yes.
deep roots in identity in
And
their relationship with God.
And seek it in easier times as well, not wait for those hard times.
Yeah. Oh, Diane, thank you so much. And the two of us really hope and we pray that there's something here that would encourage other people in their journeys.
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank
you so
you.
much.
Thank you.